Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are looking at a really compelling storytelling script that, well, it synthesizes the core concepts of Adam Grant's work on uncovering hidden potential.
Right, specifically focusing on the architecture of greatness.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle this, deeply ingrained societal myth we all carry.
Oh, the myth that extraordinary achievements require extraordinary innate talent.
Yes, exactly that.
Hmm.
We are going to explore how you can actually unlock the potential you already possess. I mean, if we are entirely honest with ourselves, how many times have we looked at a champion or like a genius or just a wildly successful person and thought, well, they were just born different?
Oh, all the time. Everybody does it.
Right. You watch a prodigy sit down at a piano and their hands are just flying across the keys in a blur. Or you see an athlete who seems to completely defy the laws of gravity. And it just looks like magic.
It looks so clean and flawless, effortless, really.
Totally effortless. And the immediate story we tell ourselves is that they were, I don't know, sprinkled with some sort of genetic stardust that the rest of us just didn't get.
Well, it is a profoundly binary way of looking at the world. The assumption is just that you either have it or you don't.
Yeah, you either got the lucky ticket or you're out of luck.
Exactly. We see the gold medal or we see the finished masterpiece, and our immediate instinct is to categorize that person as almost a different species.
A different species, yeah. Like they aren't even playing the same game as us.
And we do this because it is an incredibly comforting psychological defense mechanism. Think about it.
Oh, because it lets us off the hook.
Precisely. If their success is just a matter of this innate mystical talent, then we are entirely off the hook for not achieving the same thing. It completely removes the burden of effort.
Wow, yeah. That makes so much sense. If we accept the premise that success belongs only to a lucky few who won the genetic lottery, we never actually have to question our own lack of progress.
We can just say, well, I wasn't born with it, so why bother trying? But the central life-changing message we are exploring today is that the magic we think we see in others isn't magic at all.
It's machinery.
It is machinery. It is architecture.
And that machinery becomes really obvious when we look at the classic scenario the source material introduces to prove this. It asks us to look at two very distinct starting lines through the tale of two students.
This is such a recognizable dynamic.
It really is. So let's look at student A first. This is the naturally talented kid, the shining star.
Everything comes easily to them.
Everything. They read early. They grasp complex math concepts without even studying. They pick up a tennis racket and intuitively understand the physics of the swing.
Right. They are marked for success from day one.
Yeah. Teachers, coaches, parents, they are all looking at this kid and placing their bets, just assuming this kid is destined for greatness.
And society always bets on the early bloomer. We do this because we are deeply biased toward instant gratification.
And smooth, visible results, right?
Right.
We like things to look easy.
Exactly. When a child performs a task effortlessly, the adults observing them actually experience a dopamine hit. We perceive early competence as this super reliable predictor of future mastery.
But then we have student B. And this student, well, they struggle immensely. Everything is just a grind.
And a total uphill battle.
Right. They make mistakes constantly. They fail tests. They trip over their own feet on the field. And they just learn at a painfully slow pace.
And when society looks at these two individuals side by side, the contrast is really stark.
It is. The struggle of student B is uncomfortable to watch. So the systemic support, all the praise and resources, naturally flows toward the frictionless experience of student A.
It's just easier to support the person who is already winning.
It reminds me of playing a complex video game. Student A, the talented kid, is essentially playing the game on easy mode.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right, because they breeze through all the early levels. They can just mash a single button, defeat all the early enemies, and feel incredibly successful.
But there is a hidden cost to that.
A huge cost. Because they are on easy mode, they never actually have to learn the deep underlying mechanics of the game. They don't learn how to parry or dodge or manage their resources.
Because the environment hasn't demanded it of them.
Exactly, they just coast.
And the fact that the environment hasn't demanded adaptation creates a massive hidden vulnerability. Cognitive maps are built through friction.
Friction meaning like actual struggle.
Yes. When you encounter a problem and solve it easily, your brain doesn't bother to lay down robust neural pathways for complex problem solving. It doesn't need to.
Because it just pressed one button and it worked.
Right. But student B, however, is playing on hard mode from the very beginning.
They're dying constantly.
dying over and over again in level 1. But in doing so, they are forced to master the controls.
They have to understand every single nuance of the game's mechanics, the timing of every jump, the specific weakness of every obstacle, just to survive.
Exactly. They are building an incredibly detailed cognitive map of the terrain.
Which brings us to the critical divergence later in life.
Right.
Because the source points out that years later, the initial advantage of the talented student, it often falls apart.
It almost always falls apart.
Student A just gets comfortable.
Yeah.
Because everything has always been easy, the moment they hit a wall, the moment the button mashing stops working, they don't know what to do.
They panic.
Yeah, so they just stop growing.
Yeah.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
If we are running a marathon and the talented person gets like a 10-mile head start simply because of their genetics, I mean, even if they stop to tie their shoes or slow down to a walk, they're still miles ahead.
He seems that way, sure.
So how does the struggling student actually catch up and overtake them?
Well, a 10-mile head start is absolutely useless if the runner fundamentally refuses to climb a hill.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a great point.
We have to look closely at the psychology of ego protection and identity here. When the purely talented individual encounters their first real obstacle, maybe it's a difficult college course or a really demanding boss.
Or even just a complex relationship.
Exactly. When they hit that wall, they are utterly paralyzed because their entire identity has been constructed around being the natural.
They have never experienced the sensation of not being good at something immediately.
Right. So when they finally struggle, it doesn't just feel like a difficult task. It feels like an existential threat to their identity.
Because if they have to try hard, it means they aren't special anymore.
That's exactly it. The effort required to overcome the obstacle feels like proof that their talent is gone. So, to protect their ego from that shattering realization, they opt out.
They just quit. They decide the race is no longer worth running at all.
They hit a ceiling made entirely of their own comfort.
That is so fascinating. Meanwhile, student B, the struggling student, they just keep improving.
Because for them, the hill isn't an existential threat, it's just Tuesday.
It's just Tuesday. I love that. The source highlights that the struggler fundamentally reframes their experience of the world. Every single failure is processed as a lesson.
Every setback is viewed as practice.
Right? Every challenge is something that builds strengths. They aren't burdened by the pressure of being a prodigy, so they have the freedom to just be terrible at something until they get better.
And that reframing is the profound insight of this material. Resilience is not a genetic trait.
It's a skill.
It is a highly specific, forged skill. And it is a skill that can only be developed in the fire of failure. You cannot learn resilience by succeeding.
You can only learn it by failing, analyzing the failure, and recovering.
Precisely. The talented student, having never failed, never forged that necessary emotional and cognitive skill.
But day after day, the struggling student was building a toolkit for endurance. They were learning emotional regulation and strategic adaptation that talent alone could never provide.
It's like the struggling student was secretly lifting weights the entire time, while the talented student was just riding an escalator.
Yes. And eventually the escalator breaks down, and only one of them has the muscle mass to take the stairs.
That is exactly what happens.
So, if the struggling student eventually overtakes the talented one, we really need to extract the exact mechanics of how they did it, so the listener can actually use this.
Right, let's get into the actionable mechanics.
Because the source shifts from the narrative into these actionable traits of growth, revealing that the secret behind extraordinary achievement isn't talent at all. It is growth.
The people who achieve things that make us gasp in awe are very rarely the most gifted people in the room.
Which is wild to think about. The source maps out this interconnected psychological engine that drives this growth, and it identifies 4 specific behaviors.
Let's list those out.
Okay, so it's staying curious, embracing challenges, learning from mistakes, and continuous improvement.
But these aren't just isolated habits. They feed into each other in a loop. Curiosity lowers the threshold for embracing a challenge.
Because if you are curious, you aren't scared, you're just interested.
Right. When you are genuinely curious about how a system works, the challenge becomes an experiment rather than a test of your worth.
And that mindset allows you to process mistakes, not as like personal indictments, but just as neutral data points.
Exactly. Which is the fuel for continuous improvement.
But the text also outlines 3 massive barriers that cause most people to leave their hidden potential completely undiscovered.
And those are quitting too early, fearing failure, and underestimating themselves.
Yeah, and these seem just as interconnected as the growth traits. But I have a question about this.
Sure.
How do we counter that cascade of negativity? Because staying curious is incredibly difficult when you are just exhausted from failing. And when you've fallen down for the 100th time, curiosity is usually the first thing to evaporate.
It is really hard. It takes deliberate effort.
Think about learning to ride a bike. When you are a kid learning to ride and you fall and scrape your knee, it hurts. It's awful.
It is. You want to cry and go inside.
Right. But that scrape isn't a sign from the universe telling you that you are genetically incapable of riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
The scrape is actually the exact biological feedback mechanism required to eventually find your balance.
That is a perfect way to put it.
You lean too far left, the pavement gave you some very aggressive physical feedback, and the next time your brain adjusts its spatial awareness.
That analogy beautifully illustrates the concept of the error signal in neurobiology.
The error signal.
Yes. The scrape generates an error signal in the brain, which triggers neuroplasticity. The brain myelinates new neural pathways, specifically because of the feedback generated by the failure.
So the mistake physically changes the brain.
Literally. Without the error signal, without the scrape, there is no optimization. The problem is that as adults, we attach profound emotional shame to our scrapes.
We think a failure means we fundamentally lack capacity.
Exactly. A fear of failure makes us misjudge our own limits, which rationalizes the decision to quit prematurely.
We think, oh, I scraped my knee, I must not be a bike rider.
And the tragedy of human potential isn't a lack of ability. It is the premature cessation of effort. We stop just short of the breakthrough because we misinterpret the friction of learning as a permanent boundary.
We get off the bike forever because we don't want an audience for our mistakes.
Yeah.
We would rather preserve the illusion of competence than do the messy, embarrassing work of actually acquiring a new skill.
And if you look at your own life right now, you can probably spot the exact moments where you quit.
Oh, definitely.
Perhaps just moments before a massive breakthrough, simply because you wanted to avoid a bruised ego. You let the fear of a scraped knee prevent you from acquiring the data you needed to find your balance.
Wow. So the individuals who achieve greatness have simply normalized the process of looking foolish temporarily in order to become exceptional permanently.
That's it. They decouple their self-worth from their immediate performance.
Normalize the process of looking foolish temporarily. That is so powerful. And there is a line in the source material that completely forces you to rethink this entire dynamic.
The power line.
Yes, the power line. We've broken down the behaviors, the resilience, the curiosity, the feedback loops. The struggling student becomes exceptional, not because of a birthright, but because they develop the habits required to keep going.
Their greatest advantage was their willingness to keep growing.
Right. Your future is determined by how much you learn, adapt, and improve, not by where you start. So the definitive concept of this entire deep dive is this exact phrase from the text. Potential is not something you have, it's something you build.
That shifts everything. Shifting potential from a noun to a verb changes everything about how we interact with the world.
It really does. It fundamentally alters our locus of control.
Usually we think of potential as buried treasure.
Right, like you are walking through life and you either casually stumble upon this chest of gold that was buried inside you all along, or you don't. You're either lucky or you're not.
But if potential is not something you have, but something you build, it isn't buried treasure at all.
No, it's an empty plot of land. It is a house that you have to lay, literally, brick by brick. Habit by habit, failure by failure.
You don't find a finished house on an empty plot of land.
You construct it through deliberate effort over time.
And when you believe potential is innate, your locus of control is external. You are at the mercy of your genetics, your upbringing, your starting circumstances.
You are just a passive recipient of whatever talents you are dealt.
Which breeds passivity. If you aren't good at something, you assume you just lack the blueprint.
But when you realize that potential is constructed, the locus of control shifts entirely into your own hands.
You are no longer a victim of your starting line. You are the architect of your own capability.
It means the only thing standing between you and your hidden potential is your willingness to pick up the trowel and start laying the bricks.
It is a heavy burden of responsibility, sure, but it is also the ultimate freedom.
It is. So as you go about your day-to-day, think about the areas where you have counted yourself out.
We all have them.
If you have ever felt like you aren't talented enough, If you've ever sat in a meeting and felt like you weren't smart enough, or looked at a new skill and felt like you were just too far behind to ever catch up, remember the empty plot of land.
Your hidden potential is not absent.
No, it is just waiting to be built. It's waiting for you to pick up the tools, process the error signals, and lay the next brick. Keep learning, keep growing, keep moving forward, even when life forces you to play on hard mode.
And I want to leave you with this thought. If potential is something we actively build rather than something we inherently possess, we have to rethink how we view our shortcomings.
What do you mean?
Well, what happens if we view our current flaws, our slowness, our mistakes, our deep, frustrating struggles, not as permanent weaknesses, but simply as the empty foundation where our greatest strengths are about to be constructed?
Oh, that's an incredible way to look at it.
What is the one flaw you have right now that is actually just an unfinished construction site?